What's up, fellas? My name is Sucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some NBA trade targets, but we're not going to be talking about Ben Simmons. We're not going to be talking about Damian Lillard. There are more players than just those two that could possibly be traded this offseason, and a lot of them are very, very interesting. We're going to be talking about those. Some of those under the radar guys maybe don't get as much love and much attention. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Okay, number one on the list. This is in no particular order. These are just guys that I want to talk about, kind of talk about their trade situation. First up on the list is Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield's been kind of just forgotten about in the league overall, and I think part of that has to do with being in Sacramento. Part of that has to do with being overshadowed by De'Aaron Fox and now Tyrese Halliburton. But Buddy Hield is legitimately one of the best shooters in the entire league. Now, can he provide too much else outside of that? Not really. Some on-ball stuff, a little bit of perimeter scoring, not any defense whatsoever. But Buddy Hield is a solid NBA player, and he's a guy that other teams are going to convince themselves they need when it comes to the shooting that he can provide and a little bit of the scoring that he can provide. And so he is a player that I certainly would look to possibly be traded with kind of the future of the guard spots not really revolving around him in Sacramento. Some teams that are going to continue to come up as a possibility here is Philadelphia, who certainly needs perimeter scoring, creation, and shooting. Golden State has the opportunity to trade for anybody they want to. If they think that Clay is going to play the three, they bring in Buddy Hield to be a shooter. A number of different possibilities there for Hield. And for Sacramento, there's really no motivation to not look to trade this guy. I mean, there's no real indication that you're going to be a fantastic team next year. I think the coaching situation is a disaster. I don't know why Luke Walton is still the head coach of this team. And I would be fully invested in De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, whoever we draft this year, and trying to figure out a way to unlock Marvin Bagley, get him healthy, get him ready to roll. Buddy Hield is not a priority for me if I'm Sacramento, and as a result, if he has value to other teams, he's getting moved. Next up now on the list, probably one of the most common trade targets over the last couple of years, but the buzz has kind of died down a little bit, so I'm going to bring it back up. Myles Turner, the Indiana Pacers. There's a specific reason, though, that I'm bringing Myles Turner back up. Of course, him and Sabonis, that fit in the front court has been continually talked about. Sabonis has had really good moments when it's just him. Turner has been borderline defensive player of the year caliber guy at certain points. Can shoot a little bit, really good defender, good spacing. But do we really think that Rick Carlisle is running two bigs out there this year? Just think about what Rick Carlisle has typically done as a coach, especially over the last handful of years. He's really leaned into the spacing. He goes to smaller units. He plays wings at the 5 all the time. And when Kristaps Porzingis showed up, it was immediately clear KP was going to be the center. They were not going to be playing the 4 and him at the 4. And yes, granted, at certain points in the playoffs, they played Boban and KP together. But ideally, Rick Carlisle's not running two bigs out there. And I'm not saying that Rick Carlisle's the GM or anything, but he shows up and he leaves an interesting Dallas situation with Luka. He comes to Indiana. He's going to have some say in the organization. It wasn't the most desirable job in the world to get him to come there. And if he shows up and he's like, yeah, I really like Sabonis. Got great passing. But Heyman Turner doesn't work for me. Let's move him. Or I could see him going the other way around, because typically Carlisle, especially when the Mavs were most successful, was just looking for his big guy to roll to the rim and block shots. Myles Turner can do that, and he can give you, some jump shots as well. So why would Myles Turner not get moved? Because we've talked about it for 3 years and it still hasn't happened. I get that. I still think he's a guy to keep an eye on. I think Indiana is just kind of in a spot where they need to shake things up. Maybe it's Malcolm Brogdon that gets moved. Maybe it's Sabonis. Maybe it is Turner. But they just kind of need to change some things. They're in a weird spot. They've got a handful of different, really good NBA players that aren't necessarily making a great team. Granted, health was a big issue for them last year, but they've got Karis LeVert, TJ Warren, Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon, Myles Turner, Jeremy Lamb, a lot of different really, really good players. They just got to figure out the right mix, figure out who they can and can't get value out of, and figure out who Carlisle likes, who he doesn't, and how he really wants to shape this team. And I think more so than anything, bringing in Carlisle, to me, gives an indication that Myles Turner might not be on the Pacers when we start next season. Again, another trade target to keep an eye on. Next up now, one of my favorite guys to talk about for this offseason, and it's Lauri Markkanen. A talented perimeter scorer, a player at certain points it was challenging to be a guy that looked like he could score 20 points per game for the rest of his career. Can shoot the ball, score in the mid-range, a little bit of perimeter skill. Not that, he's not Kevin Durant out there, but he's doing some things. But defensively, it's a problem. Him having to play at the 4 and guard 4s is a potential issue, and he really needs kind of an ideal fit to be super successful. But anytime that you're that size and you have that level of offensive potential, you're going to draw a significant amount of interest, not only in restricted free agency, which he is entering this offseason, but also as a potential sign and trade player. Lauri Markkanen is a guy that is pretty unique as a restricted free agent because, yeah, younger teams could go out and get him and try and add him to some kind of young nucleus and develop him into a really good scorer, but also more veteran teams could look at him and say, this is a guy that can really help us spacing wise. He can help us add a little bit more of a scoring punch to our roster. And if we can figure out the defensive stuff and a way to cover that up, Lauri Markkanen can be a productive player for us. Kind of the comparison situationally, certainly not as players, but situationally to this that I can remember is Luke Kennard. When he came over from Detroit last year, they wanted to move on from him. They wanted to get some kind of younger player out of him. They ended up getting Saddiq Bey, which is an awesome trade for them. And Kennard, for most of the year in LA, wasn't incredibly impactful, but when he did come in some playoff games, you saw what the Clippers saw. I would be surprised for Lauri Markkanen to get signed and traded this offseason to a team that has playoff aspirations, one of the better teams in either conference, and be a nice, significant contributor for them as a scorer, as a shooter. I don't know if that's going to be something he's going to be super excited about, because typically when guys become restricted free agents, they want their money and they want a bigger role so that they can then end up getting another bigger contract down the road. But regardless, as a trade target, Lauri Markkanen, super interesting guy. Next up is actually two guys from the same team. And it's Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe. I understand that neither of those names are incredibly exciting to anyone, but listen to me. The Pelicans, they have to figure some stuff out here. They have Zion. Fantastic. They have Brandon Ingram. Awesome. What in the world is the rest of the roster? Jackson Hayes, Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe. They continue to do this weird in-between thing where David Griffin's like, we have all these future picks, and we have Zion, and we have Brandon Ingram, but we also have veterans on the roster. They're going to help us win now and bring in Van Gundy because we want to make the playoffs, and then that doesn't work, and now we're sitting there with these longer contracts of Bledsoe and Adams and two guys that nobody really is all that excited about in the rest of the league. What are we supposed to do? However, if you take the contracts out of it and you just look at them as individual players, Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe can help NBA teams. We do this a lot. When guys sign bad contracts or are on bad contracts, we start to think that they're just not good basketball players, right? And we allow the contract to influence our view of who they are as players. Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe are not bad players. They're just on bad contracts. Granted, Eric Bledsoe, probably one of my least favorite players in the entire league. Offensively in the postseason is an absolute zero. But he's an all-NBA caliber defender, an all-defense caliber guy on that end of the floor. And Steven Adams is going to go out there. He's going to give you energy. He's going to give you effort. He's going to be one of the better rebounding bigs in the league, especially on the offensive end of the floor. And he's just going to show up and he's going to be there. New Orleans, probably not an ideal situation for him. Same thing with Bledsoe. If I'm one of these teams that thinks that I'm a legitimate threat next season, I'm exploring possible trades with either of these guys, ideally Adams, if I'm honest, but Eric Bledsoe can be thrown in here too, because I think once they get out of a situation in New Orleans that is clearly dysfunctional, that is clearly not geared towards competing this year, and they get into a situation that motivates them to be the best NBA players they can be, I think I can get a lot of really good production out of either of these guys. Now, is New Orleans going to be getting a ton of value out of either of them? No, but I think they would probably settle at this point with just getting rid of one or both of those guys to kind of open up some of their salary stuff, with the danger being that if you're not good next year, the whole Zion potentially leaving stuff gets noisier. But I've talked about that before, about how I really don't think that should be that much of a consideration for this Pelicans team right now, especially considering the picks that they have. They kind of need to be focusing on their future. Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe probably not going to be a part of that. And then last up now, arguably the most interesting trade target of the offseason for me is Collin Sexton, because the Cavs now have the third pick. A lot of people were penciling in Cunningham and Mobley at 1-2 in this draft, which leaves them to basically just look at Jalen Green or potentially Jalen Suggs, or if you have another guard out there you think they should be looking at. It looks like it's going to be a backcourt player, a perimeter player for the Cavs, assuming that Mobley does go at number 2. Let's just work under that assumption right now. Where does that leave Collin Sexton? Where does that leave Darius Garland? It seems like if they're going to be forced to trade a guy based off the talent level at the top of this draft at the guard spots, it seems like Collin Sexton is going to be that guy. And it's just really tough to figure out what his value is to other teams, because if I'm another team, and even if I like Collin Sexton from afar, I could see him be like, man, this guy's got good scoring instincts. Yeah, we need to work on the passing and the defense and things like that. But as an individual scorer, he's a good player. He's talented. Let's go out and get this guy. Even if I'm a fan of him, I still have to look at the situation and say, Cleveland's had this guy for a couple of years. And as soon as they get the opportunity to bring in someone to play alongside him, quote unquote, Darius Garland, they do. And then few years later, they have another opportunity to get a talented guard, and they're going out to get one. Why are they not excited about Collin Sexton? That would give me pause if I'm looking to potentially trade for this guy. But if I'm Cleveland, it's absolutely something that I have to consider, because you can't keep stacking guards on top of guards on top of guards, especially when you have to pay Collin Sexton here coming up pretty soon. He is extension eligible right now, and maybe before everybody else finds out that you don't really like him all that much, this would be the time to possibly move him. So a lot of really interesting trade targets. As I said, it's not just Ben Simmons, it's not just Damian Lillard. I personally find excitement and interest in some of these other trade targets as well. Buddy Hield, Myles Turner, Lauri Markkanen, Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, and Collin Sexton. Maybe that's not the flashiest names of all time, but it's a list that I find really intriguing. Hope you guys do as well. Hope you enjoyed the video, because that is going to be the end of today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing to the channel as well for new NBA content every single day. Check out the box on screen for more videos from me. And yeah, once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.